Yeah, I felt a little. I don't know why I was so in my head for those first couple.
It's weird not having Randall.
Yeah, it is.
Not having his dulcet tones.
It's just weird. Like,
it's weird talking about puzzle games without Randall.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. This is episode number 23, and my name is Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with our host, DJ Mandolini.
Hey.
And joining us, as always, is John Hines.
Hey.
He's filling in for Randall Nollery this week, although he's going to be probably joining us whenever he can from this point forward, because we just love having him. So,
Aw, I love being here.
Sweet.
Well, it's not up to you. You're coming. You're going to be here.
It's actually just because he plays cool games, but...
Yeah.
Anyways, Randall and Tina are out celebrating their anniversary out of town, so they'll be out for a couple weeks, or he'll be out for a couple weeks, and John will be joining, like I said, from here on in. So let's just dig right into it. Last week we talked about Link's Awakening, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which just got kind of a remake, remaster, whatever you want to call it, on the Switch, and I finally decided to dig into Cadence of Hyrule, which I bought right when it came out and was all hyped up, and it seems like after about a week it just kind of disappeared. Not disappeared, but
faded from the limelight.
Yeah, and that's just that not just with this game, but just pretty much any game. I mean, unless it's like Breath of the Wild or something that just really captures people for months at a time or something like that, or maybe some kind of online multiplayer thing. But, these games just come and go so fast. I picked it up and just never got around to it. But thanks to the excitement of Link's Awakening and whatnot, I decided to dive back in. And I know, John, you've played through Cadence of Hyrule.
I have. And you've played through the original Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Not
game
through it.
He's played some of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I suck at that game. I know I've mentioned on the podcast.
You are much better than I am at it, because I've played it only at your house, and I struggled greatly with Crypt of the Necrodancer, and Cadence of Hyrule added several features which made it a little bit more accessible to someone like me, who was not very good at all at Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Well, for what it's worth, I agree, or at least I have similar feelings, because I'm enjoying this game quite a bit more than Crypt of the Necrodancer, although I haven't even gotten to any dungeons or anything. I feel like I've unlocked quite a bit of the map here, but I just haven't really stumbled across any thing that seems super significant. But I really like the pacing of the game, as in Crypt of the Necrodancer is just kind of constant. I mean, you do get some open areas, but this game gives you a little more leeway. You don't get punished for skipping a beat. It doesn't seem like you can keep that chain going. I don't know if it keeps your combo meter charging, but in Crypt of the Necrodancer, immediately if you don't make a move on that,
if you don't perform an action,
so even if you just move against the wall just to keep the thing going, but in this game it seems like it's a little more lenient. And then also when you clear a screen, because the game's kind of broken up into individual screens, like a Zelda game, when you get to the edge of the left, it just scrolls one screen over. But because of that, when you clear all the enemies on one screen, it just kind of goes into a free play mode where you can move. You don't have to move to the rhythm of the music, which we obviously should mention is pretty great. At least I don't know how you feel. I'm not a huge fan of the music in Crypt of the Necrodancer, actually. I enjoy it to some degree, but it's just not something I would listen to, and it actually gets it's just a little overly intense, I guess. But when you inject these Zelda melodies into that kind of framework of the music, or of I forget his name, is Danny Baranowski or something like that. I forget his name. But yeah, he did all the music for this, and I like a lot of his soundtracks. But yeah, it wasn't super crazy on Crypt of the Necrodancer, but I like the
because they're all remixes of very popular
classic Zelda tunes.
There's the Gerudo Valley theme that is very driven when there are enemies on the screen, and then they all scale back again when you clear it, and it turns into that free mode. And the thing that I actually really appreciated, even though I do like rhythm games, but Crypt of the Necrodancer was just a bit much or a bit too demanding for me personally. The Cadence of Hyrule has an option to desync actions from the music entirely. So then instead of you needing to perform an action on every beat, you can actually just take your time and enemies will move at the same time that you perform an action. So instead of it being a rhythm game where you're like doing all these turn-based actions, you can actually just turn it into a strategy like turn-based game.
It's still turn-based, but you determine the pace.
Right. And so you can, if you're having, difficulty like reading all the different enemy patterns or your own attack patterns or ability, it's like you can just look at a screen as long as you need and be like, okay, I know the Moblin is going to attack in this way. I know like the Lizaflos is going to do this pattern, and you can plan ahead, but it's still like, I don't know. I liked the way that it kind of changed the approach of a game that maybe not be, like everybody's favorite type of game or genre, and it opens it up for multiple types, even though it's the same game, it's the same mechanics, but just removing the like beat part of it, I think just really made it a lot more accessible.
Well, now that you've gone through it and have been able to, study some of those patterns, do you now want to return to it and do it?
The thing I like I guess the biggest difference between this and Crypt of the Necrodancer was that Crypt of the Necrodancer was kind of run based, where you are kind of like every dungeon's going to be different. Like you will have a new loadout each time you play. And with Cadence of Hyrule, there's this overworld that persists through each run. So even though you may die, you can start over at any Sheikah Stone, and that will like determine where you're moving on the map, and all the items you get from dungeons persist throughout each run. So it does handle a lot more like a Zelda game than a traditional roguelike, even though it does have some of the, like, you lose all your rupees, you maintain your health, your hearts that you collect throughout the entire run.
Any heart containers you get to keep that, yeah.
But like the normal, the quest items you maintain, but like the normal items like your shovel and your lantern, your rings, I think boots,
bombs and stuff like that, you gotta like replenish each run. So yeah, I actually really like the marriage of the two, I guess, concepts, or the two games essentially, because it really does just take a lot of elements. And again, like I mentioned, after you clear all the enemies on a screen, and you are left with like, you can just kind of roam around the screen at will. There are like some puzzles and stuff, like you push around some blocks so that you can jump up and get to like higher elevations, or obviously you can like bomb stuff or torch different trees. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I haven't found any of the dungeons, which those I believe are procedurally generated. Is that correct? Like once you go into the dungeon, like if you are to die, like next time you go in, it'll be different.
So there are rooms like there's a main room in a dungeon where like that has, I think pretty much every time you play, there's like basically three paths, and you have one that you need to go through first, and that will enter you into a procedurally generated map, and then that will kick you out at like one of the stairs that leads you to the next path. But that one you can like hit a switch or push a block, which then opens it up. So if you die in that, you can just proceed to the second path immediately. So like the main entrance to the dungeon kind of is always static, but the actual rooms, like the meat of the dungeon itself, is procedurally generated. Okay. And then like after you do, I think 2 of those, then you unlock the boss, and then you can just proceed like directly to the boss without having to go through the entire dungeon itself.
And are they structured somewhat similarly to like most Zelda games, where like they're built around a certain item or something like that? Or
not really. I think most of the items actually you get outside of dungeons, outside of the main dungeons. They might. I actually don't remember. It's been a couple months since I last played this.
Yeah, you played it like right when it came out.
I think. Yeah, and like I definitely, you do get a lot of quest items in like these random puzzle rooms that are scattered around the entire map, that are not necessarily linked to the dungeons themselves. And like different areas will give you different items. Like I think you get the power gloves in like the Gerudo Desert, and like it's still like linked to areas, but not necessarily to dungeons.
Yeah. But I really like how there's like the connected overworld, and it just feels more like a cohesive experience, even though I do love playing a lot of these roguelikes that are totally procedurally generated and just are purely mechanics driven and whatnot. But I like the additional layer of the Zelda, mechanics and puzzles, whatever puzzle solutions and that they add on to the Crypt of the Necrodancer formula. I don't want to reduce the game to just call it a formula. Yeah. I feel like that sounds a little reductive, but just like,
it's a good framework. Like the Crypt of the Necrodancer is a very strong like framework, and I think that it blends really well with Zelda, and that wasn't necessarily something that I expected or anticipated. But like I one thing that I did really like with that specific like Crypt of the Necrodancer formula, and like even though I didn't have the like beat mode turned on for it, I still tried to move in junction with the beats anytime I was fighting a boss, just because I felt it gave a really good pace to it. And like all the boss battles are really fun and I think really creative and have like very specific like patterns that the bosses move in that are way more complicated than just a normal enemy, where you might get used to how an enemy will do it, but like a boss, just by nature of it being a larger thing that inhabits an entire screen, will have multiple things happening at once that you kind of have to assess and then react to. And I really like those a lot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to some of those because, I have not encountered, like I said, even a dungeon, let alone any bosses. But I still find the game pretty tough. I mean, especially, Crypt of the Necrodancer is definitely a little bit tougher. Although, for what it's worth, I think there are a bunch of different characters in Crypt of the Necrodancer, and one of them is, I think, the Bard is the character's name, but it might be a different character, but it's also like turns the beat off. Does the same thing that you can do in Crypt of the Necrodancer.
Interesting.
Or in Cadence of Hyrule, I should say. But yeah, in Cadence of Hyrule also you can turn on a permadeath mode that will shuffle the overworld every time you die, I believe, on top of shuffling everything up. So like you carry nothing over and you just have to beat it in one run. So, you can kind of really ramp up the challenge in this game quite a bit. So. And I do really one last thing. I just really like the bright and charming pixel art and stuff. They did a really good job of like beautiful. Realizing that world, like kind of. It reminds me a little bit of like the Minish Cap era of like those Game Boy Advance Zelda games. So yeah, it just looks really great.
Yeah.
Well, moving right on from some great pixel art to some more great pixel art.
Look at you.
I know John is a man of his word, and he picked up Chasm. We talked about it last time he was, or one of the last times he was on the podcast. Randall and I, and we were kind of over the moon on that game. And John scooped it up recently, and we don't have to go too into it, but you have any thoughts on the bit you've been playing? I think you're already further than me, so.
Yeah, I played it a little bit before we started recording. But yeah, I really passed over the game when it first came out because, like, every review was kind of like, this isn't exactly what we expected it to be or what we necessarily wanted it to be. And we've kind of been going through a renaissance of Metroidvanias. Like, I had played Hollow Knight and I loved Hollow Knight. And while I had that on my plate, I was like, well, I don't really need to play necessarily another Metroidvania that isn't going to be, something that's groundbreaking or incredible. So yeah, I just skipped over Chasm, and then once you guys started like playing it and talking about it and really talking about the things that I really liked in the genre, like I decided to pick it up, and it's incredible. Like I really love it. It's like, I don't know. It's something about it is just incredibly charming, and like it handles really well, and like it does a really good job of creating a consistent world.
It's very immersive.
Yeah,
and I hate to. That's just a word I use all the time, but it really is just I get sucked in. Like I say this all the time too. I play games a lot when I'm like listening to a podcast or like have some music on, and like it's one of those games that like. I'm paying attention to the podcast mostly, but then once it ends, I just like I'm so absorbed in the game, I don't start up another episode, or I like end up playing for like another hour and a half after that. So
yeah, no, and like I really like because a lot of Metroidvanias that I've played like will have like, oh yeah, this is the shopkeep character, or like this is the armorer, and like they'll have a few of them that are not really like integral to the plot or anything. But I think the idea of like going into these like areas and actually rescuing these characters that, just add so much depth to this city that you're rebuilding. And I think that that's really a good way to, get you involved and get you to care about like actually adventuring in. Because I don't know. Like, I think that there's plenty of games where, it's like, yeah, just go until you find another boss, and then go until you find a bigger boss, and then just keep doing that until you beat the game.
Yeah, grind for better gear.
Right. So I really appreciated, like, the world building of this game.
Yeah, it's a blast. It's really, really great. And we obviously did the same thing like we said before. We just kind of skipped right over this one, and really glad that we all have dove into it, and we just got to get DJ on board.
I was going to say that little bit that you were playing was actually really the most I've seen of this game, and even just that little bit made me...
You should pick it up.
Yeah, I'm putting that on my wish list.
I don't know if it's still on sale, but like it was put back on sale recently.
Yeah, for like $12 or something, and it's normally $20, which is definitely a tad on the steep side, but even I think it's
worth it.
Yeah, I think it's a very well crafted game, and again, I know I said this I think on the last episode, but I think again that procedural generated world, I think people just were expecting it to be something that maybe that it wasn't setting out to be. It's not a roguelike game just because it has this procedurally generated world, and I don't know that that's the case, but it just seemed like, I don't know. I don't understand the middling reviews because we clearly honestly, all are on board.
I'm most looking forward to replaying the game because, like, the fact that the entire world will be like somewhat new, like the rooms will be the same, but they'll be in a different order, and I won't be able to predict that. It's going to keep that like tension of exploration like persisting throughout playthroughs, which is always a thing that's different, or like when you play a traditional Metroidvania where everything's very carefully crafted out, where this room, like after you play it a few times, you know exactly what's going to be. You never have that same experience from the first time you play it and you have no idea what's around the next corner. So I'm really looking forward to playing it again and then being like, I have no idea what's going to be next.
Yeah, and again, those save points can be few and far between sometimes, and it's not an easy game. Like, I definitely died a bunch. So I like that tension of, when you're down there and like, I don't know where again, if you're replaying it, you know the exact layout, you got this game memorized, that would maybe relieve some of that. But next time you play, it's going to be a different experience, at least to a degree. So, but I guess any more to add on that really, or?
No, that's pretty much it. Just buy Chasm because it's a good game that you should play.
All right.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the next project from BitKid.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can talk about another
from one Metroidvania to another.
Oh man, we're the worst. But yeah, DJ and I've had this sitting on my Switch for a while, but he gave me the little kick I needed to start it up and played through Omega Strike, and I know you finished it up.
I did.
I've been I don't know, I'm about probably a third of the way through the game.
Yeah, it's like a 5-hour game, I'd say.
Definitely not quite as meaty of an experience as Chasm, and definitely not quite as high on this one, at least me personally, just to get right to it. I'm having a good time, but I'm just not as great as we were, just raving about Chasm. I don't want to be like, this is another amazing Metroidvania, but definitely having a good time with it so far.
Yeah, it's just a simple, like, 2D run and gun platformer where you've got, like, 3 characters that you cycle between, and they each have, like, pretty much 2 unique abilities to each of them, so constantly just cycling through to find the correct way to solve each platforming puzzle or whatnot. So they also have different like shooting abilities, I guess. Like one guy's just got a machine gun that goes pretty far, another guy has like a lob, like kind of grenade type shot, another one's like a shotgun. So you also gotta factor in like whose attack works best in a given situation,
and you can level those up and like buy upgrades from like there's a very similar setup to Chasm. There's like a town like where you go back and you buy upgrades or you buy food or whatever.
Yeah, so it was cool to like be able to go through the levels with the characters I'd like to be able to when I could. Like I always go for whoever's got a double jump, that's just my default. I think one of the letdowns is, I guess I expected there to be more challenges that involved like quickly switching between different characters and utilizing the abilities like in quick succession. But it seemed pretty much like, here's a part where you use this character, here's the part you use this character.
Yeah, it's a little more segmented.
Yeah, I guess I was expecting something a little more like even quicker paced, just like do this jump, do a double jump, and then like before you land, switch to this person so you could do this ability.
So you can dash across a gap or something. I don't think there's a character with a dash, but something like that.
Oh, there is.
Oh, okay. I haven't unlocked that yet. But
it's 30%.
There is a nice pace, though, at least so far. So, like, you do the tutorial and you have all 3 characters, and it kind of walks you through all the different abilities, or at least the starting abilities. And then they... like the whole like kind of conceit is that you have this teleporter, and that's how you can just swap between different characters at will. And then the villain like comes and destroys that and captures the other 2 characters. So you start with just like the kind of main like run and gun machine gun character, and it's like a run and gun Metroidvania, and it feels a little bit like Contra and Metal Slug meets Wonder Boy a little bit. Like there's a little bit of that slower pace, like DJ mentioned. DJ, I'm glad that you mentioned about the swapping the characters, because one of the things is like there's only one dedicated button for swapping characters, and I think one of the things that could have made that work a little better and they could have utilized is like have L and R swap, so you could swap in either direction to the different characters, so you're always swapping in the same order. So they couldn't really. How many
characters are there?
3.
There's 3 different characters.
So it's not like you're cycling through like
5 or 6. Yeah. So you would, if you're one character, you would know like, hey, if I hit R, I'm going to get my double jump. If I hit L, I'm going to get my strength so I can push this boulder, or I'm going to get my dash that I haven't unlocked yet. But yeah, there's like there's like DJ said, there's clearly little sections that are like, oh, here you have to use this character that can roll under this tight gap. But I do like, at least for me, like I don't like like Metroidvanias can be a little bit tedious for me, all the exploring. So like I like to hear that, oh, it's like 5 or 6 hours or so. That's a little nice for me. And it's so far, at least what I've played, it seems nice and segmented. Like here's clearly an area where like here's an ability that you don't have yet, and you're just going to like, once you get that ability, you're going to go in that direction and basically just go down this path that's not necessary. It still has a little bit of exploring going on, but you're not doing a lot of like hitting dead ends and going back and forth over and over. It's almost like they're broken up into little mini levels. And at least for me, I kind of prefer that. Like I know we talked about, I talked you into picking up Gato Roboto a while back. And like, I know we're not always on the same page with Metroidvanias, John.
Yeah.
But which is why I was super excited that you were into Chasm. But back to Omega Strike. Yeah. I like when it's a little bit more segmented and just feels like individual levels that are just pieced together in a cohesive fashion, I guess.
Because I guess I was kind of surprised that you were talking about how much backtracking there was in what game are we talking about?
Omega Strike. Actually, I'm glad that we're saying the games again, because that's one thing that our buddy Nick Campa mentioned. Like, say the game a few times so that we know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, like,
thanks, Nick.
But yeah, like in Gato Roboto, it did really feel like you finished a level and then you just moved on. There wasn't a lot of like it could have as easily have been just in a straight line of clearing a room, moving on to the next. Like for me at least, I would have liked more like integration in like a full like world. But
you
like
love worlds.
I just like environments.
And it is fun to unlock new abilities or new things. Like Chasm has a great pacing of like unlocking new abilities, where this is, at least for me so far, also has a pretty nice clip of unlocking new characters and abilities. So I haven't hit any brick walls, which is usually that's usually when I stop playing. Like when we were playing Hollow Knight, I was just like, the last 2 hours that I played, I made 0 progress. So like I just stopped playing, I just couldn't figure out where to go, I guess. So this game, for me, being a little more streamlined, at least, I'm enjoying that a little bit more, I think.
We'll finish it.
Yeah. I am looking forward to playing some more for sure, but it is a little bit, a tad on the generic side. I enjoy the music and everything, but the pixel art is a little bit, it's nice, but it's just nothing special. One thing is like the camera is a little bit zoomed in, so like sometimes when you're like kind of not necessarily platforming downwards, but you're kind of moving downwards, like you can't see that the spikes are down there. Like, again, not to keep comparing this game to Chasm, but like I love that you can use the right joystick to like move the camera up and down, or maybe you can't do that in Chasm, but I know there's a few games that you can.
I haven't used that in Chasm, but maybe it's there.
I know you can in Hollow Knight for sure. You can scroll it up and down, and like that's a really nice feature when you have to take these like leaps of faith, and like in this game, I do feel like you have to do a lot of that, but you're also able to take quite a bit of damage and just kind of bulldoze your way through some of these chunks.
Yeah, like I feel like you don't even need to necessarily do the optional kind of side questy stuff, like
for the health upgrades,
those light gems or whatever they are.
So like, actually, that's a question I had, because I watched a couple of like the clips that you guys posted of it. Like, so it looked like there were just like 2 health like bars.
You start with 3. There's like 3 squares, but each square is like 4 hits of damage.
Gotcha.
But some hits take off 2 hits or.
Okay, because from what I liked, I was like, you can only take 2 hits. I'm like, I'm not touching.
No, it's
this
pretty
game.
lenient, and they're pretty lenient on like dishing out health and stuff like that. So, and you can buy, for not too expensive, you can buy all kinds of like health upgrades in the town if you farm for money and stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty lenient game. There is a hard difficulty. Did you play on hard,
I
DJ?
did play on hard.
You did? Okay.
Yes. I guess I don't know what the difference was.
Yeah, maybe just tougher enemies and stuff. I don't know.
Oh, man. That's one thing I was maybe a little disappointed on, like, going, from the easier levels to the harder levels was just like it just seemed like, the enemies are, a different color to signify that they just take more damage, right. Or, I wish there's maybe some more variety that was introduced.
Yeah, again, just kind of back to the little bit generic, but again, we scooped this up on sale. Not a game that I can wholeheartedly recommend at full price, but if you're into Metroidvania run and gun, like
it's not a bad time.
It's definitely I'm having fun for sure. I just like if I paid $15, I might be like a little bit like it's considering what other games you can grab at that price.
It's a wish list game.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess from here, John and I have both been playing a couple of newer games and newer puzzle games. But John, why don't you start us off with a little bit of a Crossniq Plus, which I guess we all played a tiny bit of.
Yeah. So Crossniq Plus was a Kickstarted game by Max Krieger. And it is as he bills it, a Dreamcast era like puzzle game that is high on the competition and like high octane and energy. The way that it controls is similar to a Yoshi's Cookie, where you have a grid of, in this case, they're squares of up to 4 different colors, but primarily 3 different colors, depending on the size of the grid. And what you are attempting to do is create a continuous line, or row and column, or a cross at any point. So that can also be at the edges of the grid or anywhere in the middle. So you're just trying to make crosses, and that will clear those and generate new colors in those. And it will, depending on your mode, it will increase the difficulty or just increase your score. He implemented a couple different modes based in the base game. There is an endless mode, which has a bar that and it continuously ticks down, and you are just trying to make crosses while that ticks down. And once you do, that completely refills the timer, and that the more crosses you make, the higher your level gets and the faster the bar decreases. So you're just trying to get better and beat the clock. And then eventually it throws in a couple different types of blocks. There is a lock block that the thing, like, if you've never played a Yoshi's Cookie, when you move a row or a column, it loops around to the other side. So as you're moving it, like, the row just continues in an infinite loop. But once there is a lock on there, that lock cannot proceed to the other side once it reaches the edge. Then there are star blocks, which if you clear a row or a column with that in there, it gives you a bonus. And then there are X blocks. I forget what they're technically called. It might be a null block. And if there is a block with an X on it, then you cannot move either the row or the column that block is on. So there's a lot of different things that it throws at you while you're trying to clear block or crosses as fast as possible. And it has a really good 2000s era, like late 90s, like drum and bass soundtrack, like very high energy, just electronica music. And the aesthetic of it is very rooted in Y2K and like what the future was in the early 2000s. And it was just a really good homage to that era of puzzle games. And I think it's a really fun, like the core mechanics of it, I think are just incredible and really creates like an endlessly replayable puzzle game, which I think is the best thing that you can do in a puzzle game, is just have a simple like mechanic that is just really satisfying to just play over and over and over again.
How much time have you sunk into this, John?
Oh God, I've spent a lot. So there's like a shop thing where like as you play either an endless or a time attack or a versus mode, like you gain coins and you can unlock extra tracks, extra characters to use in the versus mode. We played a versus a little bit
couple
before.
rounds, yeah.
And like DJ and I had a particularly tense bet.
Oh yeah.
And it was really fun. Like,
and it seemed like there were even like new mechanics added into this mode, like all the different items and stuff that you're using to essentially attack your opponent with.
Yes, there was a DJ kept employing a power up that basically just ruined me every time.
Give me the option. Why would I use it?
Under lock and key.
Yeah, it would like it generated like an entire row of like locked blocks. So I just could not advance like an entire row of...
Yeah, when you already have a few of them spawning as it is.
So it was basically just at that point. But we made it to... We were doing a best of 3 and we played it all 5 rounds.
Oh, yeah.
So it was... The versus mode is really good.
First to 3.
Yes. All right. Okay. But a nice thing, like, so Max has like posted a lot since release. It only came out like a week ago,
or two at the most.
Yeah, no.
Oh man,
this game just came out, and he's been posting a lot of, either screenshots or GIFs of like the development process, and like he did a good thread the other day on like how he created a versus mode, because when he initially made it, he made like a free-to-play version of Crossniq. This is technically Crossniq Plus. So like there's a browser-based that he did as a proof of concept when he did the Kickstarter version of it. And like he was like, okay, how do I develop this into a versus mode? And he did a great thread that you can find on Twitter that shows like the different mechanics that he tried out, what worked, what didn't. And I think he did a really good job, I think, where like he called it like a tug of war mode, where when you play versus, it's kind of similar as the endless mode, where you have a decreasing time limit to create another cross. And as you are completing crosses, your time limit increases and your opponent's decreases. So like as your opponent puts one, it makes yours shorter. As you do one, it makes theirs shorter. So you're constantly vying and trying to make theirs shorter so that they have less time to react to things. And it's a great way. Like we were very stressed out by the end of it.
Yeah, I definitely am already sold. Like I'm planning on picking up this game for sure. So.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make that top 20.
Yeah, they have a nice leaderboard that literally only has a top 20, which is also pretty awesome.
Yeah, and no, it's a great game. I would say like because it is like just a very early game and it just launched. Like he said that he's making some quality of life patches, and like there's a very I like the aesthetics of like the menus and everything, but it is kind of like unintuitive when you're going on. But like once you get to the actual gameplay of it, like everything is just so polished and so great. Like I wholeheartedly recommend this game.
Yeah, and it's only like $8, right?
Yeah, at full price, it's like $7.99.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna pick this up right after we end the podcast.
Let's stress ourselves out and play a few matches.
And there's also touch controls, which like there's a bunch of different ways to play this. I'm very excited for whatever he works on next, or just continuing to work on this.
Awesome. Well, from one indie puzzler to another, I've been playing a bunch of Cyber Protocol, and I'm about a quarter of the way through the game. This is one of like a campaign-driven arcade puzzle game, which is a lot more action-based than I anticipated. Like, it's got like really bright, like neon, like cyberpunk aesthetics. Like the conceit of the game, which has like one little cutscene at the beginning that's like not super animated or anything, but you just like show some people walking around in like a Blade Runner kind of setting, and then like this character walks up with like a floppy disk and puts it into this machine, and then you like basically go right into the menu screen from there, and then from there it's like you're like essentially supposed to be hacking these terminals, and it's like kind of like these grids laid out like a giant, it starts out a little bit smaller, but they get pretty huge, these levels that are like almost like Pac-Man, at least in aesthetics, and you're like going to collect all these little pellets, and there's smaller ones and bigger ones that are pretty much just for points, and essentially you're only able to move up, down, left, or right, and when you move up, down, left, or right, you will move all the way, like if you move to the right, you're going to keep moving right like very quickly until you either hit a wall or an obstacle or die by hitting something that kills you. And there's a lot that is out to kill you in this game. There's like, it starts off with some simpler things that are like some tiles or spaces that when you move through them, they're outlined in purple, and as you move through them, they like are activated, and like maybe a second or so later they explode. So if you like land on one and stop for a second, or if you backtrack, if you were like, oh, I didn't mean to go that way, if you're not quick enough, sometimes you can be quick enough to go like back and forth real quick, and like that's really where they get you. They lay out some of these extra like bigger pellets or whatever that are worth just more points or whatever, but they also have these bonus tiles that just they're like a bright yellow, and the letter like it just spells out bonus, and it keeps shuffling the letter. But you can get those, and when you unlock enough of those, you just get like little different avatars for your character. I've only unlocked 2 of them, or actually technically 1, because you start with 1.
Yeah, keep inflating those numbers.
Yeah. But this game is so tough. Like it says right up at front, like 100 levels, and I'm only on the 20. I just beat the 25th level, and I am starting to like not hit a brick wall. Like I definitely feel like I can still beat these challenges, but they are like, it's simultaneously like slow and methodical, because you have to like, once you get to a safe spot, you're like just sitting there, just scanning the map. Like, okay, what are the moves I need to make? But not in every case, but in some cases you do have to, okay, I have to like, there's like, there's laser beam shooting. There's all kinds of projectiles. There's like, spaces that you pass through that will, once you pass through them, they create a block that you then can't go past, or a wall or whatever.
I was going to say, like, the actual action clips that I've seen of you playing it, like, are very fast paced.
Yeah.
Like,
so you just are like almost looking for those like safe pockets where you can like plan your quick maneuver to make. So, and there are some of the longer levels have checkpoints in them. But you're really just trying to get to the exit. They're really everything else is just collecting for points or to unlock those avatars. But otherwise, the only goal is just to get to the exit. But yeah, like I said, there's just all kinds of different things. There's like some things that are just like a moving like spiked enemy that'll kill you if you touch it. Or now I'm on the levels I'm on, there's these moving blocks that you can only land on while they're stopped, and you can only launch off of while they're stopped. So like you really have to like see, okay, I got to get around to like be on this moving block on the left side of it so that I can launch off it in the right position to get to the next moving block. It really gets a little complicated, but you have to plot out those moves and make them really quickly in a lot of cases.
In a way, that limitation is kind of nice, because it then makes it easier to determine how you need to proceed through the level. It's like, oh, I can't pick when I'm going to, jump off this block. I can only do it at very specific points. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very like methodical, I guess. But it's there is also a versus mode in this game, which I didn't try, but it looks like it's just racing through levels.
Oh yeah,
which does seem like it would be a little tough, because one thing is like, so the game is like starts at like the standard view is zoomed in really cleose, and you do have to like hold down the ZR trigger to keep it zoomed out, and even at the full zoom out, it's like sometimes you're kind of making a leap of faith. Like you're just like, I guess I have to go up here. And it is laid out pretty fairly. Like they're not going to just throw you into a death trap. Like if your only move is to go up here.
Not going to Dark Souls you.
Come on. Nice. But yeah, it's there's teleporters. There's all kinds of, there's these blocks that like once you pass through them, like until you pass through them, they'll block the laser beams that are shooting. But once you pass through them, then the lasers that are shooting that are like kind of in sync with the rhythm of the music, which again, the soundtrack's got like a really nice like synth wave, like gets a little bit darker. I really like the vibe of the soundtrack for sure. and it has some of those like grainy VHS style, visual effects. You can turn them off if you're not into them. But I actually think it adds to this game with that neon aesthetic. It just really, really fun, really challenging game, but perfect for like those bite-sized, like, I wouldn't even say bite-sized because like when I'm firing it up, I'm like definitely committing some mental energy to this game, but it's like I'm just going to beat a level or two and then move along.
It's like super engaging and at the same time super exhausting.
Yeah.
Like I did one level and it was like great, but I was just like, I don't know if I can do another right now.
But in fairness, that was your first time playing and you picked up probably like halfway through the second world, so probably like level 15, and like I said, I'm on level 25 and like hitting a wall, not a wall, but I'm having a tough time.
Man. You're nailing it.
No, but I'm having fun, but I really do not see myself completing this game. So if you're looking for a challenge, definitely recommend Cyber Protocol. And this game, at least for now, is only on the Switch. I don't know if that's going to stay that way, but from what I saw, it's from Red Deer Games, and I saw it was a Switch exclusive for the time being. So
nice.
But definitely worth checking out.
Let's check out Versus Mode.
Yeah, we'll check that out. Maybe we'll follow up not next week, but in the future. But I think we can pretty much wrap it up there this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, our game of the month, as we've mentioned the past few weeks for the month of October, is going to be Cave Blazers. I think we've all put in some time at this point, so definitely looking forward to playing some more for the rest of the month and talking some more, especially with John, because I think you had not played up to this point. DJ and I had played quite a bit.
This is a new experience for me.
Awesome. And for Randall. I think he might have played once or twice before, but I'm excited to have a little bit of some veteran experience and some rookie experience here.
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, I guess until next week, we will catch you then. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with our hosts, Jesus.
We can't do it.
Just in the mode of Jesus. Okay. Wow. We miss you, Randy. Oh, man.
We should have started an hour ago.
Yeah.
Rip.
What is it, 9:30?
Yeah.
We're good.
Randall's time.
Oh, man.